Okay. Hello. What's up, Dash fam? And welcome to an all new episode of the Dash It Out Show, the show that brings your after hours talk to daytime. What would it be like to be a psychiatrist? To be able to help guide their clients to adopt a more conducive solution to their complicated problems, okay? But most importantly, what would it be like to be a psychiatrist that is blind?
What?
Okay. In today's episode, my co-host is about as courageous as possible. Dr. Timothy Cordes is here with us today to speak on his journey in the world of medicine while dealing with being visually impaired and how he sees the world through his senses. I was going to say eyes, but
Oh my God!
Personal. But through his senses. And he's about, like I said, about as courageous as it gets. And he's here with us today on the show. So let's go ahead and get into it. And welcome to the Dash It Out Show.
Don't hold back how you feel. Welcome to the platform for the misunderstood and creatives alike. So roll a joint and pour a shot. You're listening to the Dash It Out podcast, the show that brings your after hours talk to daytime. No wrong opinions and all unfiltered. With your host, Vic Tor.
Hey, doctor.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear
Can
me?
you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Perfect. So I went ahead and introduced you to everybody. But quick question. So you're doing great. I'm doing great. Where are you located?
Madison, Wisconsin?
Madison, Wisconsin. Okay, cool.
Yeah. How about you? Where are you at?
New York.
New York City?
Yeah.
Awesome. I have a friend. I have a friend in New York. So
Nice. But anyway, so like I said, I went ahead and introduced you to everybody. Can you go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself?
sure. So I'm a psychiatrist. I'm also a person who's blind. So probably maybe the third blind person ever to go through medical school. Along the way, I've done some cool stuff. I wrote a program that lets you listen to a protein structure, so you can sort of move through the protein structure and hear it out loud. And this is cool because people get caught up in their assumptions. And people assume you can actually look at a protein, but you can't. So my version of listening to it is just as valid as yours. So I did that, and then I wound up working with veterans doing psychiatry, and then to the university. And man, that was a huge change for me. And I noticed a lot of trends that concerned me, and I've ultimately left. But that was an important part for me.
And so even regardless with, being visually impaired, you still managed to do the unachievable. I can definitely tell you there's others out in this world who have every five senses, a brain and a heart, and refused, or should I say reluctant, to even aspire to accomplish anything. And you already accomplished something that's, groundbreaking, and that's very phenomenal.
Thank you. The way I think about it is we all have our challenges, right?
Yeah.
And mine might be more obvious, so I think I respect people, whatever their challenge is, to know that, you might be able to do more than you think, and maybe you should stretch a little.
I mean, you're a psychiatrist. You're supposed to say shit like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, I had an old boss, and he's like, how can the patients come in and grumble to you when they know you've already done so much? Like, how can they complain about their lives? And I don't look at it that way, but yeah, it's, there's something to it.
In a way, it's like I'm kind of like setting the blueprint for you here, and if I can do it, you can do it. And I really love that approach because, it just reminds us that we're all human and we all striving to be the best version of ourselves. And regardless of all the complication that life may throw at us down the line, it's about how we get back on that horse and ride into the sunset,
Absolutely. And I mean, truth be told, so I got rejected from a lot of medical schools, as you can imagine. And I was working on my resume to go be a DJ in Alaska. When I found out I actually got into a school. So I was this far away from, totally changing course and saying, well, maybe that wasn't the thing. And so and I was lucky that people, people gave me a chance. Like I can't underestimate the power of giving other people chances.
So let me just ask one quick question. What made you seek a psychiatrist profession?
Well, that's a great question. So when I went into medical school, I thought I was going to work on infectious disease. And then I realized I'd worry about catching everything. So I was like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. And then I did a super cool rotation. So in medical school, you rotate through all the different specialties, delivering babies, internal medicine. And I was at the VA, and I worked with the veterans there and just saw how helpful things could be. And was like, and I had a great mentor. And it was like, I want to be like that guy. I want to do that. And that's how it changed my mind.
Nice. And you just kind of like stuck
Yeah.
with it ever since.
I did. And what was really cool, I was a medical student in 2003. And one of the patients I saw then, I wound up caring for up until 2018.
Wow.
So I saw this same guy who I saw when I was just the young guy learning the ropes to being his doctor. And it was super neat.
Interesting. So was it your first patient?
He was one of my first patients. So when you're a medical student, you sort of piggyback on the patients that are being cared for. So I was, he was in the hospital at that time, and then he was, out of the hospital when I saw him, through, later on in his life. Really, really neat guy, awesome guy.
Interesting. So when you first, like very first, not, I wouldn't say in the beginning stages, but towards, I would say roughly around the beginning stages, but when you was honed in on your practice and you had your very first patient, and there was no piggyback riding, there was no mentors, it was just Dr. Timothy Cortez doing Dr. Timothy Cortez. What was that experience like to have that connection with your patient? Like, what was that first experience like?
It was cool. So in residency, you get to have the patients as primarily yours. So I got the feel for it. I mean, there's a ton of responsibility, but I do remember walking into work at my first job and being like, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. And it's like, if you could ever find a gig like that where you're like, this is so cool. Like, if I could care for my family and do this, like, that's all that matters. But I can't believe they're actually paying me to do this. It's awesome. And that's just a neat feeling.
Huh. Speaking of deep, I kind of want to ask a personal question.
Sure.
Because I've been
Let's dash it out.
Exactly. I've been hospitalized and before, and the thing
Excuse
it was a voluntary admission. But for somewhere down the line, they turned my voluntary, which is essentially 24 to 48 to 72 hours, to
Yep.
involuntary status, and that prolonged for 11 days. Don't really want to shout things out.
A few moments later.
Mount Sinai, Beth Israel, here in the Lower East Side of New York. Yeah. But so my thing is, as far as as being a psychiatrist, you have to be the one to like write off if a patient is able to be released or if they need further medical diagnosis. But what's that process like? Like far as being able to change someone's status from voluntary to involuntary? Like, what would be the circumstances in order to do that? Yeah. But yeah, so to reiterate,
So I was just saying that.
Yeah, I would say just to reiterate the previous question as far as what's the process like, or is there a process as to which a patient status that can be from voluntary changed to involuntary?
Yeah, and so there's this calculus that says what's somebody's risk to themselves, to each other, to society. Can we change that risk? And should we hold them? And in Wisconsin, the county actually has to get involved. I can't make that call on my own. But it's a tough one because at the end of the day, like I value somebody's freedom a heck of a lot, but I also have a responsibility to you because you're not maybe not in your best headspace and society, and it's a big responsibility.
And I can deeply understand that. That's the reason why that profession is not for the lighthearted. Because that's definitely a difficult call to make out of restriction with the possibility of being healthier, being better mentally and emotionally. But the thing is, what really got my blood boiling was the risk factors in which they listed. Now, when I was there, I was intoxicated. I came in intoxicated. I was really
Shut the fuck
intoxicated.
up.
Because I just recently dealt with the loss of my little sister who committed suicide. And no, it wasn't just the fact she committed suicide. But when I once I got word of the autopsy, so that was like really
Oh my
hard to already
goodness.
process alone. So
Yeah.
once we got the autopsy, they confirmed that it was her, and I kind of just went ape shit. Honestly, doctor, like I went ape shit, and I didn't really think of hurting myself or hurting others. It was just that I was so out of control. I could see why they felt the need for me to stay there. But that was just one risk factor, okay? The overly indulgence and alcohol consumption. That was one of the risk factors. The second risk factor is that I dealt with a recent loss. In my head and my body, I'm like, okay, but it's like 70 to 80% of the population that does with that. So I didn't really feel the
Yes,
need to be held there.
but
But like my time there, I definitely learned what I'm capable of as far as my strength, my weakness. And I really felt like I really had to put a hold on my grieving because I didn't want my grieving to come off as depression. And it felt like
Right.
I had to put on a
Yeah.
facade, right? I had to put on a facade to let the doctors know, to let the psychiatrists know, to let everybody know, like, look, I'm genuinely fine. I'm genuinely okay. I do not want to kill myself. I don't want to hurt nobody else. I literally just want to be able to breathe. And it's some doctors that was there. There was definitely a lot of psychiatrists and doctors that I really, really banged with. And like you said, sometimes it's not really up to y'all. Sometimes it's up to somebody, the state or the head doctor in charge. Like it's really up to certain specifics. And it was a trying time, but I definitely came out on top.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I feel
Yeah.
like that moment was there to just remind me of who I am or what I'm about. And did it give me time to like grieve? Not entirely, but did I grieve? Yes, I did, just in my own way. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
And,
That's it.
that gives me a couple ideas on that. I had a mentor, really great guy, and he had a patient he really thought needed to be hospitalized. And so he goes up to the patient and he pulls out his medical license and says, "If I don't hospitalize you, there's a good chance I'll lose my license." And the patient's like, an honest man, I can deal with that, and checks himself in. And so I think there is some of that, psychiatrists, they're weighing a lot of factors. And the other part is that, like, risk factors are only, like, I don't treat numbers, I treat people. And you can generally think about risk factors, but like knowing the person is different. And so in a general sense, I can see why those are risk factors. And I'm so glad you came out the other side. My goodness, but that's it's tricky business.
It is. It really was. I mean, it really is tricky, and it was a lot. I was homeless. I lost my little sister. She committed suicide. Then I'm being
Yeah.
hospitalized against my. I feel like against my will. I'm 400 miles away from family and friends. I wasn't able to contact nobody for 5 days. It was just one of the worst experiences. And in my head, I feel like it's just false imprisonment. Like, but
yes,
the
that's
thing is,
correct.
I'm a strong believer in God and faith and like, the universe and all that good stuff. Like I'm not religious, but I am like spiritually
Yeah.
religious. So I was just like, you
Yeah.
know what?
Yeah.
This I really feel like the universe wouldn't give me too much that I can't handle. I feel like God would not do that to me.
Yeah.
So I had to
Yeah.
I had to really recognize that. I'm like, okay, you know what? Since I'm here, Victor, you can't change it. I mean, you could change it. But right now, let's see what you can actually get from that experience. And what I've gotten from that experience was one, a peace of mind. Because one, I didn't have to worry about work. I didn't have to worry about school. I wasn't staying in the shelter. I wasn't doing none of those things. Okay. This is like very touching. Okay, everybody. You lucky it's a Dash It Out show. We're gonna talk about this shit. Okay. But it was a
Yeah.
very, very, very tough experience, but I definitely, like you said, I came out on the other side. And I really love how you said that you don't worry about numbers. You don't treat numbers, you treat people. So I'm just gonna ask, does being visually impaired allow you to get a deeper perspective into the psyche of your patients?
See, I don't think necessarily it does, but I think I get different information and put it together differently.
Okay, like
So
far as
so like I'll see I'll for instance, like I was talking to a patient and I was like, and if you want to because they're in college, I'm like, if you want, let me know if you got tattoos or dyed your hair or whatever, just tell me. And the girl's like, yeah, I got pink hair now, and so I get different info and I put it together differently. But is it better? That comes out in how we work together. I don't know what's better, but it's different and it's good is what I would say.
Nice, because because there's some people that take things for face value and judge you off,
Yeah.
first appearances, and I was just thinking like, okay, he's a psychiatrist, he's dealing with blindness. My thing is like, so are you relating with your patients on emotional level and also mixing it with book smarts? Like, what are your methods, should I say, into really getting to know your clients, your patients?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And the other thing I'll bring up is, you mentioned your spirituality, and I think psychiatrists like these days sometimes can shy away from talking about that stuff because they're worried about offending, they're worried about preaching, and I have had patients when it's appropriate. Like I've prayed with patients, like they brought it up or I read a cue or something. So like, and talking about spirituality and ultimate meaning, like that's important. So I think that's one thing I use. But the other thing I use is I'm pretty darn practical. Like I'll spend a lot more time on what you're doing than what you're feeling, because ultimately, what we do impacts how we feel. So I look at it from that way pretty practically. I look at, accepting things we can't change. I look on, how does our thinking impact what we do? And I kind of switch tools a lot, just depending on the patient. But there's a lot of ways to be well. We'll talk about diet, we'll talk about sleep, we'll talk about exercise, we'll talk about smartphones, yes, medications and stuff. But there's a lot of tools in the basket.
Nice. A lot of weapons in the arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what I say. Like, there's a million ways to be well, and at the end of the day, you're the you expert. And I kind of view my role like a tour guide. It's like, well, you can see the beach, you can see the mountains. What do you want to do? And I try to help people have good choices, and then they choose. Like that's sort of my.
Nice. Another crazy thing was, I was gonna ask you. I'm not really sure if you're up for it, but I'm not really sure if it's plausible. I was gonna ask, will you be able to do a quick, brief psych evaluation on me, just from the short time we
No,
talked and my back history so far? And are you able
yeah,
to?
I don't, no, because I got it. Like, it's all complicated with like, I
It is.
don't have a license to practice in New York. So I just,
Oh,
I'd be breaking
oh,
somebody's law.
well,
So
true. You know what? And
Oh.
legally, you're not, you're not my
yeah,
psychiatrist. You're not signed. But
yeah,
for the most part, hypothetically speaking, speaking of hypotheticals, we're gonna get into that later within the episode. But hypothetically speaking, you know, just from hearing me talking about certain things, what maybe not a psych evaluation, but what advice can you give to someone who may or may not have a disability, but most importantly has a dream, who has a goal, and and it's kind of hard to stay focused because of life's ups and downs. What advice can you give?
absolutely, absolutely. I'm actually working on a book. So ultimately, I'll just tell you to read my book. But today,
Shout it
so
out.
first of all, when I was a little, yeah,
Shout out the book.
when I was a little kid,
Yeah.
it's not out yet. It's gonna be a while. But
Oh, okay.
when I was a kid, I was a little, almost blind kid, and I had all these like I loved cars and airplanes and all this stuff that it'd be pretty darn dangerous for me to try to operate. And there's this teacher for the visually impaired, and she told my parents, she said, let him dream, like let him dream. And so I'm glad you have a dream, because I think these days people are afraid to dream or afraid to share their dreams. So that's awesome. And I would say that, like, be flexible, work on your own discipline in the ways you can, because even art comes out of discipline. I think it was Picasso said, I'll learn the rules so then I can break them appropriately.
Mm.
So work on your dream, work on your network with people. If you can find people to support you, great. But just having it and having a goal makes so much difference. So, I knew an Australian guy, he'd say, good on you. So,
Nice. It's like, it's amazing because you're kind of like the daredevil of Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been a lawyer? You're a psychiatrist. Like you kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm taking.
Did I tell you I got a black belt?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did that stuff, and then I realized it's easier to hurt people than heal them, and so I went into medicine and said, hey, I'd rather do this.
Yes. Okay. Great call. But I love the fact that you kind of like you have like both sides of the coin. It's just like, oh, I can help you, I can heal you, or I can hurt you. But no.
Yeah.
Like, no.
I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah, but no, imagine it's really going against your that's going against your morals, your ethics, and also going against I forgot what's it called. What's it called when you when you start off in the whole profession and they make you sign like a what's it called? They make you sign
the Hippocratic Oath.
Yes,
first do no harm.
Oath. Yes, it is. It's going against the Hippocratic Oath. Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving along. So I have a little game that I would like to play, and it's called the Dash Dash. And the Dash Dash is essentially just hypothetical scenarios in which you would just fill in the blank. Okay, it's not literally, but just something a little quirky. Are you ready? And are you up for playing?
Oh, I'm ready.
It's a green light. Okay, so let's get into the Dash Dash. So I'm going to start it off just so you can get the feel of it. Okay. So the first question is, ain't nobody love me like blank and I love blank. So I would probably say, ain't nobody love me like my dad and I love my dad. Something like that.
Yeah.
Or it don't have to be literally. It can be, ain't nobody love me like pepperoni pizza and I love ice cream. Like, it don't have to necessarily be literally, but just to try to, unravel the tension and everything, the topics, and just kind of pull little pieces out your brain and just kind of like play around a bit. So,
I play around in my brain all the time. So this will be great.
All the time. Okay, let's do it. So for you, ain't nobody love me like blank and I love blank.
Ain't nobody love me like my mom. And I love my kids. I got 2 boys.
Woo! I know that's right. Okay, second question. When I was younger, I was a blank. Now that I'm an adult, I'm a blank. Shoot.
When I was younger, I was a pain in the ass. And now that I'm older, I'm a part-time pain in the ass.
I love it. Oh, did that quirk. Okay. Here we go. I'm a vegetarian, but I like blank.
Let's see. I love highly processed foods. They're not good for me, but I love them.
You love them. Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay. This patient is blank, and I admire blank.
Okay. This patient is struggling, and I admire their courage.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Moving along. My reality is blank, and is so much better than blank.
Let's see. That's a good one. My reality is evolving, and it's so much better. Anxious reality, or the people who are always worrying.
Yes, that would definitely do it. And I'm one of those people. And I love that your reality is always evolving. Words to live by, everybody. Words from the doctor. Words to live by. Always evolving reality. Okay. Last but
and my, you know what? Could I add to that? My reality is funny. My reality is funny. Life is funny.
Life is funny. Yeah, life definitely can be hysterical. Okay, so the very last one. Okay, I've gotten my first. I've gotten my first lottery ticket for $1 million. The first thing I was going to do is blink.
Well, I'd call my wife.
You call
Maybe
your
that's
wife?
practical, but that's what I do. Yeah.
I mean, hey, it's practical. I mean, look, you get like, hey, look, we have money, we rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
We going on
Yeah.
vacation. We going on vacation for a bit.
Oh, totally. I'd totally call her. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that concludes the segment of the Dash Dash, which is just pretty much just
Hooray!
some
Awesome.
fun, quirky little hypothetical scenarios in which you kind of ask just to kind of get to know you a little bit more. Besides just the Q&A portion of the show, and yeah, this has definitely been a blast, a whirlwind.
Can I put in a shameless plug for my podcast?
Sure.
It's called Bald, Blind, and Buddies. And it's a friend of mine 30 years ago. We met. And we don't agree on much, including politics. And we just have a podcast where we just talk about stuff. We talk about ideas. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we just we share, we grow, and we learn. And so I just shameless plug. Sorry about that.
Interesting. It's up now. Like, are you able to like watch it streaming?
Yeah, we got about 15 episodes.
Hey, sweet. Where they look? Where they at? Shout it out. Why
Apple, Apple, Spotify. I'm on Substack, but you can find it. It's called Bald, as in no hair, Blind, and Buddies. You just Google it, and it's out.
Interesting. You heard it here on the Dash It Out show.
You did. So
he said bald, blind,
and Buddies.
that's UDDIES or DDYS. Okay.
DDIES.
Okay, I see it. Timothy Cordes and John Bolin. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
nice. Interesting. So, well, besides that, and a book that you're working on that you can't fully disclose as of the moment, would you be willing to disclose as like a brief synopsis as far as this new book that you're writing? Or is it on a hush hush?
Yeah. So no. It's just pretty early on. So I get contacted from time to time, and people are like, well, I'm blind. How do I approach science, or how do I do this? And so it's a sort of a handbook of sorts for people with all kinds of challenges on how to approach problem solving, what I've learned, and what might be helpful to them. Because whenever they call, I do my best, but I'm like, you know what, I could sit down and think about this in detail and really come up with solid answers. And that's sort of the inspiration.
Nice. So it's almost like a self-help book.
Yeah, kind of. And it's also, because of humility, right? My story isn't going to be your story, but hopefully there's something you can learn that, that I did that you don't have to,
Yeah. Interesting. Well, can't wait till it come out. Is there anticipated turnaround time, or are you just going this?
Oh my goodness. It's going to be it's going to be a year or two.
It's going to be a year or two?
I got a lot going on. Yeah, but it's it's in the mill. So I don't know how people write so many books. I got to be honest.
So is it kind of like part memoir, part self-help, or is it like overall like more of a memoir?
No, it's going to be more of a handbook with anecdotes to illustrate the points. So it's So the structure won't be a memoir.
Interesting. I love that. I think that would really it really help to resonate. It would really help to
I
resonate
think so.
with what you're saying, the message you're trying to convey. Yeah, look, keep doing you. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a vibe. It's been a vibe. Like, I got to know you a lot more, and I really feel as though the listeners really need to hear your story. Everybody, don't we just love Dr. Timothy Cordes? Let's go ahead and give him a round of applause. Yep, we're gonna go ahead and get applause.
All right.
All that good stuff. But thank you so much for coming on the Dash It Out show.
You bet. Absolutely. Have a good one, okay? It was nice meeting you.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything else that you want to share before I let you go, like far as if you have any other works, or how can the listeners get in contact with you, besides all the amazing advice that you've given, like how do you what do you want the listeners to take away from this?
I think it's basically you be you, keep on dreaming, keep on struggling, and give things a shot and give other people a shot. And that's sort of my take home.
And that's the reason why we love you. Thank you so much again, Dr. Tim Cortez, for coming on to the show, keeping it real.
You take care. All right.
You too. Until next time, I'm your host, Vic Dash Torres. This is my awesome co-host, Dr. Timothy Cortez. Everyone, have a great one.
All right.